So welcome back. This is week 2 of our new book study on man, child, and the promised land. And we wanted to welcome 2 new participants. And I'm going to ask you to just introduce yourselves to the group so everyone will know that we can just go around and say our names so that they will know also who we are. I'm Reverend Lady Mother Sandra Addison Britta, and I am the spiritual director here at Triumph Life Center. We want to just welcome those that are here in person. We want to welcome those that will be joining us via YouTube now or later. And if you're joining by YouTube either now or later, please remember to subscribe and then hit like so that other folks will know that we're on. Okay, so let's just go around and introduce ourselves because we have 2 new participants.
Oh, right.
And we'll pull up. I'll let Jamie when she comes in. I'm assuming she'll get here. Maybe squeeze in by you guys. Okay. All right. Okay, go ahead, Kelly. We're gonna start with you and go around.
My name Kerry.
My name Kareem. My name is Jesus.
Jesus.
My name is Julie Johnson.
Whoa. We can come back.
My name is Abdul. My name is Jones Black. No.
All right, did everybody go? We put some napkins out on the table.
Yeah, we get,
Here's some napkins. Okay. All right. So last week, we introduced the book, Man, Child, and the Promised Land by Claude Brown. And I opened up by giving a context when the book was written, a few years before most of you guys. However, I think that what's interesting for me in reading the book is that there's so many parallels relating to today. A lot has changed in 50, 60, 70 years, but a lot has remained the same. The other thing that was so interesting, there was a nuanced thing in the book that unless you were from our generation back then, you wouldn't understand what they were saying. So we'll get into that. But last week we ended by doing some readings together, and that's the plan for tonight. I'd ask you to read through chapter 2, ending at page 63. So I actually want to pick up at the end of chapter 2. And if someone has their book, would you just read that section? Because I want us to begin with a conversation. In a conversation where we're talking about some of the main themes and ideas that are in the book. So we have Claude Brown, who's known as Sonny in the book. Claude is the author of this book, and it's a somewhat loose biographical account of his life. And he starts off writing at a very young age in terms of telling us his story. He's not even in school yet when he's talking about how his life is developing. And some of the interesting things and facts about it is that even before going to school, he knows some of his young friends in the community do what they call play hooky. And he wants to know, well, what is hooky? And his little friend that's a couple of years older than him tells him, well, you can't play hooky till you go to school.
Right.
So he couldn't wait to go to school so he could play hooky. And he goes to school the first day, and he stays in school that day. But he starts playing hooky the second day of school. And so, very interesting. Come on in. Oh, let me run and give you a hug.
Yeah, the ball comment.
Welcome back.
How you doing? I need to help me. I think I had time.
Okay, cool. Let's get a chair. Here. Watch this.
Hey,
Put something in before you put that.
all right, yeah. Let me put my hey, how you doing?
I have to run and get that to her. She has been away for a little bit.
Well, you're
so-
going to see our turn on Sunday.
Yes. Okay, she'll have to introduce herself. And then we're expecting Jamie to show up too. But as the chapter 1 and chapter 2 develops, I think we get an idea of the dynamics and the relationship of Sonny's home life. What his life is and his view of the world from this little boy, starting at about 4, 5 years old, how he's experiencing the community. Interesting, we read last week when we talked about the building that he lived in, and he lived in Harlem. You know where Harlem is? Ever been to Harlem? Yes, yes. Harlem, as I shared, at one point was a beautiful place. It was the Renaissance, the cream of the crop. Come on in, we got a full house tonight. For our community, the African American community. Art, music, theater, so much creativity came through and developed in Harlem. But we also know that Harlem also became a hotbed for drugs and all that comes with that, for the migration from the South to the North, and poverty, and everything that comes with the inner city. So it's a mixture. It's not just a place without hope, but poverty is a very rich community, very rich in creativity, very rich in talent. It's an interesting place and a beautiful place, but yet it's not without its challenges. So this little boy, Sonny, is growing up, and he is in and out of reform school so many times before he becomes a teenager. He's still in that, pre-teen, and reform school, but even before reform school, there was something else he learned how to do very early on. After he learned how to play hooky, there was something else that his friends used to do that he wanted to know what that was. Anybody remember? It was like the next step up from playing hooky.
Was it bloody or something?
No, not the drugs, and I'm trying to think of the word. They called it, started with an S, but it was when they stayed out all night.
They stayed out all night at the
And
friend's
then
house.
come
It
home,
was
right?
Jockey.
Yeah, I should have wrote it down. But he's still like 7, 8 years old. He's mastered playing hooky. He goes to school in the wintertime because it's too cold to stay out in the street, right? So he'll sit in class in the winter, but as soon as the weather warms up, he's back out in the street playing hooky. But then he learns how to stay away from home for 24 hours, 48 hours, even a week. And what was so amazing, just baffling to my brain, this 8-year-old boy with his little friend is in Harlem, out all night long, sleeping on the park bench, on the subway train, and then by the riverfront, sleeping on an abandoned boat. And I'm thinking about 8, can you remember when you were 8 years old?
I can't do that.
Can you remember that? I remember my husband used to share a story that when he was a teenager, about 14, 15, when he was feeling himself and his dad, the conflict between father and son we're going to talk about. And, he wanted, to do what he wanted. And his dad said, well, you're not going to do it here. And so his thing was like, listen, I don't have to live here. And what he ended up doing was he was living in Brooklyn, riding the subway trains all night long. So I thought about him as a teenager, which is a big difference from an 8-year-old boy.
Right.
We think of 8 years old as being the age of innocence.
Right.
Right? We think of someone that needs to be protected.
Yeah.
But more than that, he was doing this, is that it seemed from the way I read the story that he was enjoying it. Is that how you read it? Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
No,
That he was enjoying living his life like this.
Yeah.
So let's go to page 61, towards the end of chapter 2. We read a number of passages from chapter 1 last week, but I want to end where we were supposed to begin, where we were supposed to end this week, page 61. And I want to bring into our discussion this idea, this conversation that Sonny is having with his dad. Sonny is about to go away again to reform school. It's one of the many times that he has been away at reform school. And his dad, and we're going to talk about that relationship, calls him in the kitchen. He has this conversation with him, and it begins, if you start on page 61, at the top where his dad started telling me. Someone would like to read for us?
Dad started telling me that it would be
61.
a long time before I would see the streets of New York City again. And that maybe when I got back, I would appreciate them enough to stop all that goddamn stealing and stay home like somebody with some sense. He talked on and on like that. He said something. Dad asked me if I remember when I used to get up every Sunday morning to go out and watch Mr. Jimmy with money from people who were dumb enough to go hunting for a pea that wasn't there.
Hold on a second. So I don't know if they still do that because I haven't rode the public bus, the transportation, haven't really been in the city like that in a while. But when I was younger, and at least y'all have to tell me if this still goes on. There would be guys on the train or the bus, or even out in the street. And they would have what looked like a cup and they would have three of them.
Yeah.
They show you a coin or a
Yeah,
ball or
three hard
something.
marks.
And they're still doing it. And you would have to, catch it, and then you bet money that you could figure out what you, so that's what he's talking. He called three-card Marley. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what he's
three-card
talking
Marley.
about there. Go on, Julie.
Okay. He talked on like that. Then he said something. Dad asked me if I remember. I used to get up every Sunday and go watch Mr. Jimmy win money from people who were dumb enough to go hunting for a pea that wasn't there. I told him I remember. Then he asked me if I knew what a fool was. And I said, a fool was somebody stupid. Dad said I was right, but there was more to it than that. He said that a stupid person to keep looking for something that is never there.
Okay,
Dad,
let's pause there for a moment. So his dad said, I mean, when he asked Sonny and Sonny said, what is a fool?
yeah, he
And
said,
Sonny said, it's a stupid person.
yeah.
So Dad said, yeah, that's right, but it's more than that.
Mhm.
Said a fool is someone who keeps looking for something that's not there. What do you think he meant by that?
Doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results.
Doing the same thing over and over and expecting something different. Do anyone have any examples of that for your own life? Or if you want to keep it as an example of that?
It could be a relationship too.
It could be in relationships. Say more. You say more.
What did you think did?
You keep looking for something in someone
It ain't there.
and it's not there. All right.
Also, I look at it like this, also you trying to live in a false reality, trying to mold it in your own concept compared to actually looking at it as reality.
Okay, all right, this is the prince, by the way, he didn't introduce himself. But let's say about, otherwise known as the prince. So you're trying to mold something into your reality,
Yeah.
but it's a false reality. Anyone had any experience with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I used to have friends that I seen the wrong they was doing, but I just kept saying, well, nah, they was playing with me, they just jostling around, they just joking, but they was really like
Being a
them and being ignorant and then not accepting me for who I am and me accepting them for who they are, but still trying to put a painting over it and trying to make excuses.
Okay, so this goes back to what the professor said, relationship, and a relationship can be family ties. It doesn't have to be romantic, it can be that's your buddy, because Sonny had a lot of friends, guys and girls in this book, right? He had a lot of friends that he was hanging with, and we talked last week about Turk. Turk was with him when he got shot. And Turk was more concerned about whether Sonny was going to let the police know that he was with him than how Sonny was doing. Friendship. Turk was so afraid about, is he gonna turn me in? and not so concerned about whether Sonny was gonna die. He's lying on the floor in the fish and chip store, with a bullet wound in his abdomen, and he's looking at his friend, who he can tell his friend don't give two hoots about him. He just want to know, he would rather, and Sonny says, I think my friend would rather me die, he on this floor than turn him in.
Yeah.
What does that say about friendship? Think about that. And having a running buddy, having someone that you're friends with, who when you get in that crunch, because friends are not about being there for you just when everything is good. Someone's your friend because you expect them to have your back in those times of crunch, when things aren't going right. You expect them to be there, not to abandon you,
Right.
and not to be more concerned about their own welfare than your own. An interesting relationship when we think about stupid. So his dad says to him, his dad is giving him some wisdom,
Right.
right? His dad is trying to give him some wisdom because Sonny, by this point, is, I think he's 11 years old at this point. And he is still repeating the same behavior. And he's not just doing it, he's enjoying it. Okay. That's the thing that kind of gets me. You know, it's one thing to do a certain kind of behavior. But how do you enjoy sleeping in the streets at 8 years old versus in your house? What do you think that was about? Why would sleeping in that boat by himself? Because his friend at one point got picked up and he was by himself. Remember, he said when he finally, with some nice police officer, finally came and took him home, and he told his dad the story as to where he had been. His dad didn't believe him and kept beating him for like 5 days. Then his dad finally went to see if the story was true. His dad never said, oh yeah, there is a boat that he was sleeping in. But his dad stopped beating him because he realized, yeah, my son has been sleeping in this boat. That's what he's doing what he told him. Why do you think that would be a viable option?
Instead of him staying home.
Yes.
Like, why you don't want to
What
be
was
home?
that about?
What's going on at your home that you don't want to be home? That you gotta sleep in the boat instead of being home.
But I think
He's
it
more
was,
comfortable, that he's more comfortable, you're not getting blues, you know.
no, I think it was a control issue. The control and behavior, like he knew, like his dad, you know, some people would rather be like full control, like I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. You know, we've all been there. You know, I don't care what the consequences is.
He go one.
So I'm just gonna do my thing, you know, or whatever. And I think if he had to be home in a controlled situation, he didn't like that discipline. He was undisciplined.
Yeah, because his father used to always beat him, right? But his father used to beat him for being bad, not going to school. You know what I mean? That's why his father was
He
beating
wasn't
him.
beating him because he was bad, he was correcting him.
Yeah.
He was doing wrong.
Yeah, he was doing wrong. That's what I'm saying. Like, it was discipline.
So about 8-year-old.
Right, he was wild though.
8-year-old was not conscious of what's really going on. They are, but they're not.
Right.
When they enjoying it.
I just think,
Not when they enjoying it, anytime they enjoying it, it's wicked news.
Would you expect the 8-year-old to have a mind like?
No,
No, I'm with you.
You
know, right or wrong.
Pull out with a 18 period, that's it.
You would beat him?
Yes, I would beat him.
That's when he gonna be back.
I'll do just like
that's
my
why
father, I
he
would
is
beat
his
him.
brother. So why?
Sometimes it ain't all about beat.
It's not
You
about-
just put your label on it. Beat him.
When you have to beat him every day, but you have to beat him to correct it.
but see, look, and like thinking about, like you said, 8-year-old mom. 8-year-old mom, you are very inexperienced as well. But
Right.
yes, you listen to your parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you listen to their authority, you listen to they rules and regulations. But who also get the biggest influence out of your life at 8
Mhm.
years old?
Right.
Your friends. So I feel it's
Uh-huh.
more as peer pressure. I want to fit in. I want to be down. I want to be a parent. I
Wow.
want to chill. And then eventually he's got addicted to it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What were you saying?
I would say at some point the fear of the parents.
Generally speaking,
That's
because
okay.
most often, you know, from a social scientist perspective, looking at children, Children usually are under the influence of their parents until they get to somewhere around 10.
Yeah,
When you cross that 10-year-old line, then peer pressure begins to pull at them. Remember, I told my daughter, when my grandson, he was an excellent student always through school. I used to love to go to her with her to parent teachers night. The teacher would say, I wish I had more like him. And I would say to her that, your realm of influence over him will expire by the time he gets to middle school. So you have to make sure you put an impression on him, because when the other influences are pulling him, you're gonna have to have something in him that's gonna hold him, because you won't be able to say it to him anymore. It has to already be there. And, but what's interesting about this little guy is he's 8 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he is, I don't call kids bad, but he is a bad on many levels.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of a kid wanting to go to school so they could play hooky.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was waiting for that yellow letter in the mailbox.
Right.
Burned up the whole mailbox. So he took the letter out the mailbox.
Boy,
He was like bad.
But I think to what
So why
said,
made him bad?
and I think what's the challenge for parents is that
What
there's
made him?
always exceptions to how children are
Brought
child
up.
grow and develop.
Mhm.
And you have to be keen enough
Yeah.
to know that this, just like you have children that are exceptional geniuses, they are reading at 2 or 3 years old, which is not the norm, and spelling before they even get to school.
Yeah.
There are children that are exceptions in many ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes parents,
Right.
Your
On your foundation.
parenting for one kid is not gonna work for all kids.
Right.
You gotta have
I'll tell you
faith
that
in
right
your
now.
kids, too.
You know,
I think it's all about foundation, right?
Let's just go down to number 1. Because we kind of, I think, established this idea of what stupid is, what a fool is,
right.
or what is a stupid person, or what is a fool. That definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And, I think in our quiet, private moments, we would all probably say,
Yeah,
I would say we made stupid decisions.
yeah, we all did it.
Just made stupid.
And we
we
still,
made
and we
we
still,
stuck
Yeah,
in
pay for that
stupid
mistake we
decisions.
made.
yeah,
There are consequences. Yeah, I like framing that because we are not that thing.
right.
We're not the behavior, and it's important to separate the two. That's why I don't like calling a kid bad, because bad defines the person.
And we always know.
And you may have behavior that is not the right behavior, but it doesn't define who you are.
We all gotta remember how we came up. We wasn't perfect, so we can't teach our kids. We could teach them to be better than us, but you can't get mad at them. You gotta think about what we was doing. We was young, bad, get suspended from school, get spanking. So they only going by what you teach them and what they see. But if you sitting down, you got patience with them and talk to them. It ain't all about beating. Talk to them. Like, look, I want you to be better than me. Do this, do that. Like, whatever you need up with, I'll guide you. Like, just that third, just be better than me. That's it.
But honestly, sometimes for some certain children, above whooping is what's needed. Because sometimes if you just keep on putting them in timeout, and that's considered a slap on the wrist in the head in some of these children's mind. Because if I was one of those kids, if you just told me, oh, stop it, or yelled at me, I would have ended up going through something other stupid, even worse the next time. But then when you beat me, now I'm in line like, oh yeah, hello teacher, I'm in front of the line now. Like,
Why parents don't beat their kids? You know why? The type of jumping in everything now. Parents can't really beat their kids no more. The type is coming for you.
I would say it's more than one way to punish them, though.
Yeah.
It's more than one way to punish them.
It is. It is.
I would say take with things they like.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there, y'all.
Oh, thank you.
That too.
Cell phone, iPad,
That too.
phone, cell phone,
Take social media away from them.
Yeah.
Take social media into
Yeah.
it. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like,
That part right
outside, it
there.
killed me. I rather got the book whooping.
yeah.
It killed me.
Yeah,
I
and
like
instead of
it.
taking my cell phone away. Yeah.
We can see from Sonny though. I mean, I think Sonny got more beatings than anybody that I know.
For real. For real. said his sisters was crying, both his sisters was crying, like, please.
My
honey, stop.
Behavior, no,
Mm,
It had zero impact on
you
his
got some
behavior.
kids like that.
Yeah.
He was able to take the butt whipping
mm,
and keep moving, and keep
Yeah,
going.
you got some
And he
kids
knew
like
he
that.
was gonna get beat.
Yeah, he knew it, he
And,
knew it.
and one of the things,
His sisters was just begging, like, please, honey, stop
his
it.
sisters, and at one point, his mom had called the police.
Folks on the
to
father,
stop the father from
from
being.
being, yeah,
I mean, it was like, you've gone too
yeah,
far.
you gone too
But-
far.
I don't know if you noticed one of the nuanced things that had me just smile, Julie, when I was reading it. It talked about, his dad beating him with a razor belt.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what that is, what is that?
No.
Oh, one of those that used to sharpen the razor.
Yes, yes, back in the day,
The
yes, my dad
That's the belt.
shaved with a straight razor. And he had a belt that he would use to sharpen his.
That
straight
big
razor.
thing,
That
that's
was
the
the
belt.
belt that he used for this.
That's
Yes. Whoa, we're talking about something that was striped. Hearing you?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was enough I got beat by my dad one time in my life.
That was enough.
That was enough. Like, there's no going back for seconds, thirds, or anything else. One time. And for the most part, my dad only beat the boys.
mm-hmm.
But this time I fell under his wrath, and so I got that razor belt. And I was a little person, but I don't know that anybody, maybe at a barber shop, they may have that. You know, where they sharpen the straight razor. But I said, this kid wasn't just getting a little patty back. He was getting his.
It was too important to get.
Yeah, it was brutal, but
Too much stuff.
his dad
No,
gave him, what's interesting, his dad told him the definition of stupid, right? But his dad was doing the same thing. His dad kept beating him, expecting his son to change.
hey,
And he
yeah,
never did,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Son, you know, you're trying to do the same, getting what's not there. He's trying to get his son to do something. He's
Yeah.
been doing this for years now.
yeah,
His son isn't
look,
changing.
look, he ain't got, yeah. Just give
So
up, 'cause
think
he ain't
about
gonna
that from
change.
the parents' perspective.
Yeah,
Sometimes as parents,
you just gotta let it go.
children are a mirror for us.
Mhm.
That's crazy. That's deep though. That's really deep.
Yeah,
Wow, I didn't think about that part.
Yeah,
He's doing
Yeah.
exactly what he's saying to his son, don't do.
yeah. There you go.
That's his pattern. So let's talk about, as we move into chapter 3 and 4, home life versus reform school. That was the other interesting piece for me. I've been to the youth house here in the city of Newark when I used to work with young people and people that were incarcerated. And for me, it wasn't a place you wanted anybody that you were connected to, or any child to be there. But Sonny actually preferred being in the
Yeah.
reform school.
Yeah,
It
he
was
said, I wanted to go to this
exactly
one, he wanted to go to a special one, I hope my friend up there too.
Again, what?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what I'm
he's just
saying, like,
following like all of these stereotypes
Yeah.
away.
yeah,
He's
if I
not
could
like,
stay
oh,
out
you know,
there
send
or go to a, yeah, he didn't want to be home for some reason, like, why is that? That,
Because, like she said, the control also and the peer pressure, I think it's a mix of both, because it's like, I don't wanna listen to my father. I know, I mean, he may be telling me the right thing, but I don't wanna listen, I wanna live my life. And then also my friends is doing my
Like an
thing.
8-year-old had.
Who knows, man?
yeah, again, he got sick.
I'm like, me, at 8 years old, you talk about going to a reform school, I was looking at him like, I'm, all right, yes.
You gonna straighten up, right?
Right,
He's
cause again,
great.
again, think why he's only 8,
That's what I'm saying, he's a
he's
great.
only
nigga.
8, and he's wanted. But he's only 8,
He probably leaves
the
at
age of 8.
I mean, this is just hypothetical, and it's no way for us to know, but do you think if his father had been, you know, just a passive dad, you know, don't do that, boy, or son, you know, you're gonna get in trouble. But if his dad had not been the guy who's in there, do you think that would have made a difference?
I don't know, because it's like, if he always doing that and he's whooping, if he would have been positive, I think it probably would be a little worse.
So was it the conditions in his home that forced him into the street? Or was it something about his own personality?
Ain't like,
No, he undisciplined. I'm sorry. And I told, and I have, like, my grandson, and he's like, doesn't like structure, and I said to my son, I said, if you don't get him straight now, an undisciplined young man is gonna be an undisciplined grown man. So you gotta nip it and give him structure and tell him this is the way it is, because otherwise, there's a lot of undisciplined young men. And it's where you go, you know, he's up here, the sheriff officer up there in the county, they can't get it together, because they don't want, you know, they don't like the structure, they don't, you know, they want to do their own thing, they don't like rules. And that becomes a problem, it becomes a problem, you know? And I'm sorry, maybe because where I was raised, you know, I'm scared to death.
Cause I say that we all got our own kinks, and I believe, like, you know how they say you gonna get a child that was either as bad as you or worse than you. Maybe he was just that kid.
Well, he talks about that, about his father and meeting his grandfather. And that, that behavior that seemed to have been in the line of the men in his family. But I just want to push this a little bit more as we think about the energy that was in this young boy. And think about it from, I mean, some would say he was wild. Another way of saying, instead of saying he was bad, he was just wild.
Yeah.
As Julie said, you know, he didn't want discipline. Have you ever seen wild horses in TV or movies?
Yeah.
Even when the trainer is trying to break a horse to ride it, a horse doesn't want you to ride it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's some that you won't ever be able to ride. Because there's something about the energy that refuses to be controlled in that way.
Yeah.
And is it possible that there are some people
That's like
that
that. Yeah.
That's like
their
that.
energy is just that I will not be controlled in any way? I'm just.
You got some people like that.
A wild flower.
Yeah,
And my energy is, I come here
yeah,
with energy at that level. Someone is.
David.
Is it possible? And if so, then how do we parent? How do we parent? How do we mentor? How do we support someone like that?
It's hard.
Are you okay? Come on over and get.
What about this creative thought?
Go ahead.
Like, what you in response? Like, if I was in the father's situation, right? I probably would have hit it with this, like, I understand, son, you don't like being in control. So what I'm gonna give you, I will give you rewards to be able to have control of your own. If you reach my expectation, one hand washes the other. So you want me to treat you like a man, I'm gonna treat you like a man. So you gotta earn this in order to get this.
That's a very interesting point. Then positive reinforcement rather than negative.
Right.
You can sit down with them, too, tell them about what you've been doing. You don't want to come up in the same stick.
Right.
So I've been doing it.
At an 8-year-old, that's when
You
one
don't
kid
want
not
to grow up. Not really, it's how you sit, speak.
But
Right.
you gotta still incentivize the child so you can grab some type of attention for what you're trying to say to. If you just tell them your whole life story, you're gonna be like, oh, you an old man, you don't know nothing about this, you that.
You gotta have some type of connection with them. Get some type of connection with them.
But you speak.
Yeah,
I
right.
was out there,
Speak to 'em.
I was doing the same thing you was doing.
Right.
I got older, I got wiser.
Instead of bro, like the gentleman with one ear, one out the other, I was looking at him like, you go hold back.
Because you think that there's a disconnect, Brother John. You say something.
Here comes Peter, like,
They get that razor belt. They get
Beat 'em, right? Beat 'em.
I will
got
give you
learn.
talk and.
Talk, bye.
Beginning. All how you watch, he have one way. You cannot correct it. You simply have his head, it's only one way he see it. So he blind on all corners. He's just straight ahead. That's what he doing. But your father, I would have tough skin on him. Even that he want. He'll have to stop, my boy. Still talking. It's impossible.
Well, we ain't get to know.
Talking now. Think about the context also, and I want to bring this in, if you think there's any relevance here. So he's born in 1948.
Right.
Okay, so that would make him what? 70?
Yeah.
So he was in Fort Brown passed, I think a year or so ago, but he would be like 75 or something.
Right,
So his dad was born, probably in the 20s.
right.
So think about the reality for a black man
Mm.
in this country,
Mm,
and they came up from the deep south.
mhm.
What
Yeah.
was, how did he release his
Yeah.
energy?
Yeah.
As a black man in this country.
Country, right, that too, you gotta look at it, that
And he
too.
talks, and I think it's later on, I don't want to give it away, but Claude or Sonny talks about thinking his father's this bad man, who's beating him and a strong disciplinarian, but when he's with white folks, how he's bowing his head and yes, sir, and yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
That's survival. That's energy. That's not really who he was, but what he was forced to do and be because of the circumstances of how he was living. So what happens with that energy? Remember, when we have children, we don't only give them our DNA,
Mhm.
from parents, father and mother, and give them our bone structure, our eyes, our hair, and all of that. We also give them parts of our energy, and that energy that's been bottled and locked up in us and unexpressed. And I think that's what parents don't often realize, that while stallion may be the energy that you never knew how to express, and it's come out in your seed.
Mhm.
That's
True. Mhm.
So true.
You could be buck,
Right,
Yeah.
oh, that's true.
but now your kid is buck.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true, yeah.
And sometimes that's the difficult thing for a parent to see, one, because they're still living in the context of their life.
Well, Pastor, can I say
Yes.
something? Okay, if you went through abuse as a child growing up with your mom or what, right? Now, you didn't treat your children that way, okay? So when you were speaking about the energy that you have, maybe all the thoughts that you're holding into, how it, jumping, okay, so like you're basically saying everything that's going on in your life has now been passed on to them. And that's why you think children are disrespectful or whatever the case may be, but you've never disrespected your child. So how is it that?
It's not, and that's a good point. It's not just the disrespect. Because remember, Sonny didn't disrespect his mom.
Mm-mm.
He loved his mom.
Come on, and his sisters too.
And his mom, except for that one time when she was like, her husband had went too far disciplining Sonny, she pretty much allowed it to happen. She could have stopped it, right? She could have stopped all those beatings. But Sonny loved his mom. He didn't have a bad thing to say about her. He loved his mother. He respected his mother. But it was his dad who they were locked in this,
They, it's like,
in this.
on there and
Learn from it.
Greece.
They were locked in this battle where one energy was trying to control the other energy, and it just wasn't gonna happen.
So you're saying that, sister, that you pass on that bad energy to,
No. Okay, this is what's basically happening. I have given birth to 7 sons, but I have 6 living. Okay, the oldest is 33 and the youngest is 15. Okay, one of my children was murdered at the age of 1 by a babysitter. And so I've been holding a lot of that in for a long time. But not trying to get off that point. The point I'm making is you can show so much love to your children, even though you didn't get it from your mom or whatever. And it's just like, it seems like it's the opposite reverse. If I treated them like nothing, they would respect me now.
Sometimes,
But
yeah.
because I treated them like something, they're just disrespect. And I just can't get it. I don't understand where that link is probably separate. Not
And
all of
sometimes-
it, just a couple of
And that often happens. I mean, I will say sometimes I will see children who their parents pretty much, didn't raise them. Their parents were there, but the child was being the parent. And the children will grow up and they'll have, they'll love the parent, then you'll see the reverse. where the parent was there, did everything for them, and the parent, and you can't find a kid where the parent needs something.
Mhm,
But that, part of life is complex.
mhm.
And remember, I talk about this often. I try to talk about this so much, is that we judge what we see and from our sensory self. The spirit never lies. That's what we have to look at. If the tree is bearing pears, you can't convince me it's an apple tree,
Mhm.
because it's not possible.
But
It's
sometimes,
not
Pastor,
possible.
someone can have devilish ways and be devilish and show you a face that's completely different to swoop you inside.
Oh, sure.
And then,
sure.
boom.
Topic, you wanna bring that topic up?
Sure.
Well, happy a topic, you gonna be a Sunday?
Yeah,
We're gonna talk about that Sunday. Well, we're gonna talk about false. Wait,
False difference,
oh, and that's the trickery
deception.
of life. Definitely, definitely. Go ahead.
I was
because
gonna
want to make sure we
say-
Get some reading in.
This is the really get to what your point. I think it's more of like, when you say you like say you have like a game system you want to get,
Uh-huh.
you get it, you finally get it. Now after years of having it, now you stop playing as much as you first had it. So people start losing appreciation and losing value on certain things because of how long we had it. Compared to if they did not have it, now they're gonna always appreciate it. Like me, I have grew up with not having my mother. And I love my mother and she passed, like when I was not. But if I had her all my life because she treated me good, I cannot say, but I would appreciate it still to this day.
And I think that's important because we have to remember that even though our seed is from us, each apple is different, each pear is different, like each snowflake is different,
Yes.
right? And so our children come from us and they're part and parcel of us, but they're not us. And we have to be able to allow that branch to grow in its own direction. You can have many children and they're not all gonna go the same way. They're branches, and that's what we say in our seven life affirming principles. We agree that we're different and we're like branches on a tree. We grow in different directions. And allowing that path, allowing them to take that path. And then as a parent, sometimes it's very difficult. And I understand what you're saying, because even raising my children, and I was fortunate in a way, but I had one that tried to take me out of here in terms of like, where did this kid come from?
Yeah.
Did things I never thought about doing.
Exactly.
Kept me up at night and almost losing my mind trying to raise this child.
How about it?
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to disclose, this is a public space,
No.
but I've been in some difficult situations. But I'm telling you what I did, even when this child was going through that, because I had people saying what you should do and what I shouldn't do. And what I remember though, I carry this child in me. I know this child. That behavior is not who she is. Yeah, that behavior is reprehensible. It is horrible. There's no excusing it, but I know who that child is. And I held that in me, whatever that child did. I only saw the person I knew I birthed until she came back to that place.
Did you ignore her? Did you just let it go?
No, I didn't just let it go. I had to hold that. I had to be firm. I couldn't try to be her friend. I had to be her parent. But I also had to love her through that and not let that behavior take me off course. Because that behavior would have had me put her out, lock the door, and say, I don't ever want to see you again. You can't come in this house. But you got to know who you birthed. And I had the wisdom to know, and this God gave me that, to see beyond that behavior. Now, I wouldn't trade her for the world. Not for the world. But you got to know who you birthed. That's what I knew, the energy and how that energy got in her. That's why I'm saying it. I knew where that energy came from. No, I never did those things, but I knew exactly where that energy came from. I recognized it.
Mhm.
So I couldn't condemn her. She didn't know where it came from. She was just playing it up.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So we want to get some reading in. We've talked about father-son relationship. And he has a story about two frogs. We may pick that up next week and begin there. But I want us to go to the end of, let me just see my book for a quick second, I'll give it back. I want us to pick up at the end of chapter 4, I think it was, where I need this to read.
34.
On page 90. Page 93, the beginning of chapter 4. So we've read chapter 1 and 2. We finished last week, and we're into 3 and 4. We should be finishing this week. Let's pick up at chapter 3 on page 63. And let's begin reading there. And let's read up to, I have wrote it there, from 63 to page 72, or we'll see how much we can get in before the clock. 63 to page 72, how much we can get in. And we'll go around and we'll share, so we'll share. Julia, you have your book.
Yeah.
Everybody, okay, everyone has their book. So we can pass the book around. Who wants to start off reading? Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
We're on page 63, read a chunk and pass it around, and let everybody get a little bit of it.
All right, well, you read the talk, and then I'll go, and then I'll pass it back.
Okay, so
Like
we're
that.
here.
Yeah.
Jessica, we're here, right?
Which one?
Chapter three.
Just read the first one.
Okay.
Okay, say it.
I can't remember going to sleep that first night at Wiltwick. I only remember lying there in a strange bed in a strange place. For what seemed like a year-long night, I closed my eyes about 1 million times, hoping that I would open them and escape from that bad dream. But every time I opened my eyes, it was still there.
Okay. By the time daylight began to creep into that big old room that everybody was called a dormitory, I had already been planning for a good 2 hours. I was going to get out of Woodwick. I couldn't run away because I didn't know where I was and wouldn't have known which way to run. So the best way to get out was to talk that white man named Mr. Stillman into letting me go home. I decided to find Mr. Stillman as soon as I got up, and I was going to tell him that I had something real important to tell him. While Mr. Stillman was listening to me, I was going to fall down and grab my chest and start breathing real hard, like I was dying. They would probably take me to the hospital and try to find out what was wrong with me. And when they couldn't find anything wrong, they would probably kick me out of the hospital. But then I was going to stop eating, stop talking, and eat some soap powder or a lot of salt and get real sick. When they put me back in the hospital and tried to feed me, I wasn't going to eat. Not even if they gave me fried chicken and a pear pie. And every time the doctor asked me how I felt, I was gonna say I want to go home. That's what I was gonna say to him. Anybody, and I wasn't gonna eat anything as long as they kept me there. I knew they would have to send me home. They wouldn't want me to die on them. I was only up there for playing hooky and stealing and stuff like that. I hadn't killed anybody, so they couldn't let me die. You read this one right here. Yeah, when the real talk.
And they're really talk.
Real tall, real light skin. Real tall. Real tall, real light skin.
Just read a little louder so we can hear you. Speak a little louder.
You want to parties?
Came into the dorm, dormitory, quick when a real tall, like, lights. And started yelling all over the place. Everything was all said in my mind. I was sure I would be back on the street by the next week. I was still lying in bed thinking about how I was going to get out.
Like that, right?
When a voice boomed, let's give it. Right in my ear before I could turn my head to look at him, my bed started jumping up and down real fast. Then stopped jumping all of a sudden. Then the bed next to mine started jumping up and down. The light skinned white looking man was big and yelling, let's give him. Guys would jump out of bed and run into the bathroom. So I jumped out of bed and ran to the bathroom. Who I had a guy who was washing next to me. I could see Mr. Stillman. He told me all I had to do was go to his office after throwing a handful of water on my face. I dashed out the door to find Mr. Stillman's office before I could get out of the house. I heard a voice booming out my name. Before I stopped running, I knew it was that tall light-skinned man. Before I turned around, I knew that I didn't like that.
Okay. We're gonna pass it on, Julie next, okay.
When I told him where I was going, he said Mr. Stillman wasn't in his office yet. And that I had to make up my bed before I could go see him. So I went back and made up my bed. Then I started out to see Mr. Stillman again. Again, I heard the real life voice of the man that everybody was calling Sims. When I turned around this time, knew that I would never like anybody named Sims as long as I lived. The man named Sims told me that Mr. Stillman wasn't going to be in his office until after breakfast, and that in the meantime, someone would show me what my job was in the house was. After I finished my job, which was cleaning the bathroom and had breakfast, a bell rang. Everybody started heading for the last place I wanted to go, the school building. I started walking away from the crowd, but before I could get to hope that I was going to get to see Mr. Stillman's office, I heard the voice that I had learned to hate in just a few hours. I turned around and faced them. At first, I wanted to cry. Here was this big man I hated and couldn't do anything to. If I hit him, he probably would kill me. But I had to do something because he was fucking me up, fucking with me. Mr. Sims asked me, where was I going? I opened up my mouth to tell him, but the thing I heard myself saying, smiling to protect myself, was, Mr. Sims, are you white or colored? When I heard what I said, I thought, Lord, please have mercy on me. After what seemed like a real long time, Mr. Sims smiled real quick and said, come up, boy, you have to go to school now. Mr. Stillman will still come to your class when he gets here. I wish I'd call him Mr. Red instead of asking him what I did. Not the way white people say red, but the way dad and colored people his age say it. I should have said, what you wanted now, Mr. Reed, I'll be wouldn't have smiled at.
Go ahead, Brother John.
Then he might have killed me, but he wouldn't have smiled. But I don't think he would have killed me. He would have lost his job. When I thought the next time he messes with me, I'll call him that. No, I'll call him Yella. Yeah, I'll say. Watch out. Want me, Yella? Man, if he wasn't so big, I'd call him Yella. Yella, nigga.
Whoa.
I was struck.
But if
But
I did that,
But if I did that,
you probably would kill me.
Job or no
the
job.
I
job.
know that.
I kept asking the teacher, who was a real pretty light-skinned lady, to let me go to see Mr. Stillman. When the teacher got tired of me asking her to let me go, she told me that Mr. Stillman wasn't at the school, but that I could see Mr. Yorkshire, who was Mr. Stillman's assistant. I knew she was lying, but I smiled and asked the teacher to let me go to see Mr. Upshur. The teacher sent me up the guys in the class. with me. The guy showed me the official office and left. I went into the office and asked to Mr. Stillman. The secretary told me that Mr. Stillman wasn't going to be in all day, but that Mr. Upshur would see me as soon as he was free. I sat down and waited for a few minutes, and Mr. Upshur came in. When he said he was Mr. Upshur, I knew he wouldn't help me. He was colored. What could he do for anybody? It seems that everybody was trying to stop me from seeing Mr. Stillman. But I was going to see him as soon as I got out of school. All I had to do was stop yelling people I wanted to see him when they couldn't stop me.
What page are we in?
Yeah, we are paid 65.
We're on page 65. Okay, so we have to stop there because it's almost 7. Okay, so, for 2 things, if I don't forget, we're on 2 weeks and we're off a week. So next week, we're off.
Oh, Tuesday.
Tuesday, we're off.
Okay.
Okay, we're back on not October, it should be November 7th. I think that's right. Someone check your calendar. The following Tuesday should be November 7th. But that next week, we start our meeting at Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
All right.
So we'll be preparing for that.
On the 4th, you're still having the
4th, we start at 12 o'clock. We're gonna have on Friday, the 3rd, we're gonna have our 12 o'clock noonday prayer and meditation and lunch. Then from 5 to 7, we're going to have, we're gonna have our business session, our open mic. So we're gonna have a forum and then we'll have dinner that evening. Saturday, we're gonna have the flea market and a whole lot of other things going on. On Saturday, we're gonna go back from 10 to 4. Okay, and then Sunday, we're back here at the regular. So for the next 2 weeks, we have 2 weeks to read through chapter 4.
Okay.
So when we come back, we should be, read through pages 121.
Okay.
Okay? So we'll be in read chapter 1 through 4. Okay, and that's where we'll pick up reading. All right, where's your professor at?
In the back.
Okay, who's gonna close us out in prayer? We want to just thank everyone for joining us. This was a great discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you. You really brought some great insight.
Yeah.
I'm glad you came back.
I love being here.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable. I love it here.
And just blessings to you. Blessings to our team. Folks, come gather around so we can close out in prayer. Let's come back, get together as we are gonna prepare to close out. Okay. And prayer. And I'm gonna ask, this is my room? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna ask Sister Jessica if she would would close this out in prayer for read and we close.
Everybody, prayers up. Their prayers.
Anything else you want to do? All right.
When I gave my prayers. Yeah.
Everyone for just, being here and supporting this work that we're doing. So this is the Prince. Go ahead.
Hello, I just want to say I thank everybody for coming out here for this beautiful evening. And that I know a lot of people going through a lot of times, a lot of tribulation. And I'm just beautiful that we all connect to a book and a topic of sociological skills and which skills that we need to be fighting in real life, fighting with people and all these manners. And I just want everybody to have a beautiful night and beautiful week and beautiful weekend. God bless everybody.
Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, everybody, come get a slice of cake, chocolate cake.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want the cake. Come get it.